Hi everybody, welcome to Hedgehog Academy. I'm Kevin, the illustrious chief cook and bottle washer here. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about, because why are the education system failing? You send your kid to college, say he wants to be a painter, sculptor, whatever, and yet again you come from a blue collar background, or you own a business or something like that, or you want your kid not to fail, to succeed, but he wants to do this and you do everything else. Okay, that's fine. But before you send little Billy or little Sally or whoever off to school for that first day, or even in the interviewing process, I want you to look at the curriculum. If you own a business, how much of that curriculum, if you was taking that curriculum and you said, okay, we're going to switch this to my business, how much of that curriculum actually applies in a real world setting? Yeah. Okay, there you go. The second thing is when you start looking at the classes and you start saying, hold a second, how do we know this works? Well, they get the degree. That doesn't mean anything to me. I want my kid to be able to support themselves after they get done with college with their specific area of study. So if my specific area of study is fine art, I want to be able to make a living off my work. I want to be able to pay for the degree with my degree. Pay for my living, pay for my degree with work. Okay, not enough coffee today. That component right there means an awful lot. So, little Billy, it sucks to tell you this, but you're not making a living off your work right out of college. In fact, more than likely you're going to wind up working at Starbucks with a nose ring and claiming you know everything because you got this degree, but yet again, you're still failing at the one thing that you decided you wanted to do, which was to be an artist. He was so good at it, but he didn't stick with it. He didn't. Then why did you send him to college? Well, I get all these excuses. The end result, everything's an excuse if you're doing anything else but focusing on that area of study. That area of study is, okay, what does it take to be an artist? What does it take to make a living? Is there a business component? And I always put this to anybody who's in any college. Have you ever seen any museum collect work of non-value? Have you seen a gallery ever take on artists when their work has no value attached to it? Have you ever seen anybody buy a piece of work based upon the value when there's no value? Probably not. I'd say in 99.9, there's always going to be an exception. Okay, take my word for it, there's an exception to every rule, but that's not the norm. Okay, so I sit here and I listen to people all the time. I talk to teachers, I talk to educators, I talk to parents, I talk to everybody. Okay, and the end result always comes down to one basic factor. I want my son or my daughter to be creative, but I want them to be successful. Okay, so you're going to send them to a college which has a college university which has a bad track record of any success afterwards. Even had a teacher argue with me about that, and I said, well, my educated experience on this outweighs your 6 years of this and teaching in an education system that doesn't really promote success other than a grade. College is not there to support that. So how can you make sure little Billy, little Sally, everybody can be successful after they graduate college if they decide to take a 4-year career or a 6-year career or 6-year sabbatical from real life? Okay. 1, for 4 years in college, they should be made to work at a custom picture framing shop. Yeah, because we're going to frame work our entire lives, so you might as well know how to use the equipment and everything right there. And you're getting paid, what, $17, $18 an hour? Okay. 40 hours a week. I don't give a shit about your college. You're going to do that. Okay. Take your classes. I don't care, because you're not getting what you really need in that anyway. So I'm not really focused on that. But these are for people who decide they want to go to college, but they actually want to listen and they learn something at the end of this. So now, 4 years, continually framing, not one semester, 4 years, every single day. It takes the average framer 6 months of cutting mats 8 hours a day to where they can cut a mat and that just the cutout falls out naturally with perfect cuts around. About 6 months of cutting every day. Not once a semester, not once a week, every single day. The second thing, an art store. 4 years in an art store. Pricing, structure, what's in the damn tubes, what's this made of, how's that made of, which is better, which is this, which is that. Instead of those fine shitty materials by the college bookstore that are overpriced anyway, and on top of that, they're really shitty products. You guys are teaching students using like a Liquitex. Are you out of your mind? Get in some decent products. Get in some decent paint. Golden. Oh, there's a good one. It's good, but it's not the best. You're teaching students to do creative work using the shittiest materials, but expecting the best results. Where does that come in at? That's the reason why you work at an art store. Now, you also have to be able to run a studio. Studios aren't a place where you just paint. A studio is where you conduct business. A studio is where you do production, marketing, business, sales, everything. That's a studio. And for all you idiots out there who think all you have to do is go into a studio and paint, why? Show me one studio from the first century all the way up to modern day that did not have to make money. See, we always leave that component out. The idea that you actually have to make money at what your chosen skill is in order to do something with it, so then you can be called, oh, what's that word? A professional. That's right. So, there we go on that. Now, during that time, because we're dealing with a business, we're not dealing with some sort of crafty hobby thing. We're dealing with a business. What does it take to be in business? What do you have to have? What knowledge do you have to have on that end of it? Now, these are all tool sets. All I'm talking about is tool sets here. I'm not talking about skills with them. I'm not talking about experience with them. I'm talking about the tools themselves. Now, once they go into the business, what are they having to study? Definitely accounting. You definitely have to study taxes. You have to study contracts. You have to study business license. You don't really have to study it, but you have to learn about it so you can know it. So basically, you have to study it. Because I guarantee you, if you go to a show without a business license, and you're doing these shows, they all want a business license. Every single one of them. Okay? A vendor's license. What's the difference between a standard business license and a vendor's license? When do you need to get an LLC? When do you need to just do it a partnership or a sole proprietorship? You know, how to get around all this stuff. And what is sales tax? What is sales tax between here and here? And do you have to split up the percentages yourself doing the state's fucking job? Or can they actually do their job where you just send them in, hey, here's your 7.5%. You do what you need to do. I did my part. I'm not here to do yours. Okay? So taxes, advertising. How the hell can you do anything without this? Now, does that sound strangely like a business degree? What does it take to be in business? Keep that in mind. Like, again, these are just tools. These are tool sets. There's no skill to this yet because you don't have any time in. Once you get your time in, then you're going to get skilled with these tools and be able to use them. That's based upon the experience of using those skills, building those skills upon those tools. There's three main components here to build a base of a good artist. Okay. Now, wherein did I talk about painting? Where in there did I talk about attending any sort of anything other than learning how to use this stuff so you can accomplish the goal of being an independent, successful artist on your own? I haven't. So what does it all lead to? And during this 4 years, you decide to go to college. What I also want you to do is I want you to find a local show. And I don't mean an art show. I mean farmers markets, crafts markets, stuff like that. It has to be a weekly show. There's usually 24 of them a year. You're signing up for all 24 shows, buddy, or young lady, or wet senior. All 24 shows. That's usually 6 months. They start end of April, go into October. Arizona, it's October to April. So you're switching, and then you got your summer shows. 4 years of this, okay? Because this way, whatever you're learning in that classroom, you can apply directly to the real world experience, and if it sells, good. If it doesn't sell, you might want to rethink it. Because unbeknownst to you, people are experts in what they like. And if they don't like your big paintings of vaginas, because that's what you got an A of in school, you're not going to sell. In other words, you got an F. A for effort, F for be able to make a living. But how do we change that F to an A? Well, you start painting things people like and enjoy, and you start using your abilities to create that so they can separate you from everybody else's, and then you wind up making sales. Oh, here's a clue. I just sold a picture for $300. Well, I got a master's degree and I've got 400 hours in that painting. How come it's only worth blah, 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 blah. That's because you've never sold before and you have no idea what a price point is. And that's the reason why you do these shows, so you can establish a price point. Once you establish your price point, that makes it easy because then there's no guessing. Nobody gives a shit about how many hours you got in the paint or what kind of paint you used or what type of surface. They don't give a shit about your brushes. They don't give a shit about your light bill. They don't give a shit about anything else except what they see on that canvas and do they like it. In other words, they buy by size. So your time is irrelevant. The materials are irrelevant. They're buying the image. They're not buying the paint. Okay. They're not buying the canvas. It's a part of the image. They're buying the image. Okay. Get that straight. Okay. So if they're buying the image, then all that time you put in really doesn't make any sense. Because if you say, if I have two paintings, say I got two paintings this size. This guy and this guy. Now say I put my time into this, and I got 800 hours into this, and I got 2 hours into this. Well, I like this one better because I got more time in it. I'm going to ask $5,000 for it. But I only have 2 hours in it, so I'm only going to ask $50. Because I don't like it. Oh. What do you think the customer's going to say? Same size canvas, same type of subject matter, all that kind of stuff. Exactly. Because you're inconsistent with your pricing. That's the reason why we always go by the square inch. If you call any gallery, any working gallery, and if you don't know what that is, it means you're not actually in the industry very long. You call a working gallery and find out how they suggest their artists price their work. Some of them will say, well, what are you asking for it? And they will actually make the determination, well, I'm asking $3,000 for this. Do you have a record of sales to back that up? Do you have collectors and other representation? Well, no. I said, then I've always been very artist with it. Then it's not worth $3,000. It's worth maybe $50. There's your ego coming in it. Oh, I could never sell it for that. Why? What makes you so much better than somebody else who's saying, I do 16 by 20s and they're 1,200? And when I also explain this, I ask them, did I stutter when I said my price point? I do $5 a square inch. That's it. I don't have to stutter. I don't have to question. I don't have to explain myself. Because that comes from years and years and years of selling. So unless you don't have that, be honest with yourself. Well, I've only been at it a couple of years. They just started showing. And, I'm trying to sell big works, but yet again, the small stuff always sells. Well, what does the small stuff go for? Well, about $50, $75. Okay, well, there's your price point. What size is it? 10 by 10. Well, 10 by 10 divided by $75 is how much? How much per square inch? There's your price point. Now you got a price point that is established for large works, small works, any works. You might have a couple different price points. You might have price points for sketching. Like my pigs are a specific sketching price. The portraits I do of dogs that have passed away is a very specific. I price it on feeling on that because, I want that up on their wall. So I'm not going to say, okay, it's a 20 by 30, or it's a 24 by 30. So I'm going to charge you $1,800. I could, but I wouldn't have many sales. And basically, it's not killing me to do it. Okay, so I have a sketching price. I have a formal price too. That's $5 a square inch. My sketching price, I basically look at the picture, look at the amount of work I'm going to have to do, and if I know I'm going to get more, I'm going to give them a deal. That's all that is. But that just comes from years of experience. So now, you're learning your tools, you're getting paid in these different areas of expertise to learn how to do the business, learn how to sell art supplies, learn what's in them, learn how to stretch canvas, learn how to frame pictures, learn how to cut glass, learn how to do this, all using their equipment, so you don't have to have any equipment. And you're also usually getting a discount in these places. You're also working for taxes, so you're learning the book end of it from the base up, which you really need. You're also studying personally on how do I get a business license? What does it take? What do I have? How much is it going to cost? None of this stuff is free, so just so you know. So by the time you're done in 4 years, you've probably made your degree program back. The first couple of years is just getting your feet wet, understanding what you're doing. That third year is kind of important because that third year should be where you first start showing. And I mean every single show. And I'm sorry, kids, that one show an artist does not make. It also doesn't mean anything unless you have a record of sales that you can base consistency on. No product is ever put out at a high price without ever having anything out. Usually they discount the crap out of it to get it in there, out there, and done. Romco Peel, everybody knows that. If you buy my Jinsu throwing knife, I'm going to throw in a second set. Now, if you order now, we're going to throw in a third set just because we're that good. Discounted price, $19.95. Okay. So after 4 years of this, you probably have a good starting price point. You've got a consistent product because you're listening to your buyers and you're also putting it out there in consumption. Now, where does the individual part come into that? That's how we separate ourselves from every other artist. When artists look at my work, I'm a colorist. I'm not a draftsman, I'm a colorist. Can I draw? Yes. If need comes to and I'm forced to, yes, I can draw. But I don't want to be into that end of it. I want to get into the damn work so I can make a living. I can sell. So once you've got your drawing background, and once you've got these other things, once you've got these tools and skills and experience, what are the opportunities? Now we talk about opportunities, usually about 3 to 4 years into it. That sounds like a bit like college or business plan, doesn't it? Yeah. How much do you understand about your business? How much do you understand about why should people come to you versus me as an artist? That's what a business plan is for. You write this thing up. What is your competition? What do they charge? What's this? What am I? Typically, how I answer that best for any student is to go visit your local farmers markets where they have an arts and crafts component. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit down and I want you to write down everything that walks out of those booths. I want you to write down the price. I don't want you to write down anything that you like because you're usually wrong. Once you do that, then you go home and you study. Now, isn't that kind of like analysis? Yeah. So, strategic analysis on what you're doing. Marketing research. What sells? Where does it sell? How does it sell? What separates out your work from theirs? What makes your work? Well, I'm a better artist. That doesn't mean jack shit to me. I've seen people who paint like shit be able to outsell everybody else. That doesn't mean anything. That's what I want you to think about. So during all this time, you're doing all these things, plus you're going to college. Pretty soon you start questioning, I got to finish this degree because I got all this time in. But on this hand of it, I've actually made as much money here as it's cost me to pay over here. But I've made the money versus paying. Which is more important? Now you still have to pay that back. But you don't have to pay this back because you made it. Yeah. Scales are not even, are they? Okay, so now your opportunities will be any show that will actually let you sell. And you've got to have a setup. So you've got to look at that, and you've got to look at the business end of that too. You've got to have a name, you've got to have a product, you've got to have a booth, you've got to have a setup, you've got to have a way to getting to there and from there. And that all takes gas, time, electricity. What do you think you're doing on with indirect operating expenses? That's what that is. Gas is an indirect operating expense. Your truck or vehicle is an indirect operating. Your tent is indirect operating expense because you got to have a tent in order to do that. But that's not part of the. That's not part of the image. If you've seen my booth setup, you understand I have about a $3,000 booth setup. It's taken me a lot of years to get that to where I wanted it. It just wasn't given to me. I had to earn it. So your opportunities will be these shows. Success to me is rated on sales and collectors, not on representation. Because representation is a mid-range thing where you do it so you can keep operating over here, but they will pay. You're not going to be able to support yourself off this end of it. Because that end of it, even if they sell 4 pictures a month, I'm sorry, you'd have to have your price out mid-range pricing in order to do that. So if you're going to make a living, you need a price, it's got to be 5,000-6,000. You got to be able to produce that. And there was a saying in Santa Fe that if you got a good working gallery, you need to be able to produce 20 paintings a month on average for that gallery. Not 20 paintings a year, not 20 paintings every 5 years, not something you did 5 years ago. That's 20 paintings a month to keep them going. Because if they start selling, they don't want to wait. Now, later on in your career, yeah, then you can back off of that because you've earned the right to do that. But in the very beginning, no. You paint like a crazy person. So, those are the opportunities. The success is sales, maybe representation, and collectors. The success also is you've established a working price point to where you can get from point A to point B and you don't have to question. Okay? And you start establishing goals for yourself. Well, I want to do more this month than last month. I don't want to make the same amount. I want to make more. Then it becomes kind of a game. So the success is a whole copulation of all these things together to create this. So all this work you did here this is built on everything else. But you can't do this without this. And you can't have this without all this. So your groundwork is more important, your work ethic, everything, how to make things happen. But if you don't do that, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to get anywhere do you want to be. And it does come down to the decision of college versus non-college versus experience. And a good way of looking at this, parents, is first of all, look up the statistics of successful art careers after college. And I don't mean 1 or 2. I want it across the board. Make it the rule, not the exception. Look at the rule, not the exception. There are always going to be exceptions, but that's the one I'm looking at. Because we're not an exception. We are the rule. Okay? Now, if you look up and you see the rule of thumb is that 98% of all students graduating colleges with an art degree fail across the board, then you have to make a decision. Do I want my child to fail and fail miserably and fail instead of failing successfully? Or is there a better way I can use my funds that I'm going to help support him or her to make this a valuable experience? And yes, there is. If you want them to have the experience, you sign them up for every workshop worldwide. Take the $80,000, put it in a bank account. Okay. Buy them tickets to every country on the face of the planet so they can go study. Once they've studied, they can come back and then they can decide what they want to do. And that way, if college is in the book, and you take whatever's left and you say, when you get back, whatever's left is help you start your studio. Only when you get back. This money's going to sit here, but whatever's left, this is your studio fund. This is the only support we're going to give you. So what will happen is these students will come back, they'll have a funding, and they know what they want to do, how they want to do it, and where they're going to do it, because they've been to these areas where these things were born at. And when you come back here, we don't give a shit where you're from. Can you sell? Can you market? Can you show? Can you sell? Can you be collected? Is there value to your work? What are you doing to create that value to your work? I've already explained it. It's an easy process. It's an easy but the hardest process you'll ever do in your life. But once you're done with it, I don't want your thanks. I don't want your money. I want your success. That's the payment for this. All this I've done right here, right now, honestly, is bullshit. It's free information. It's free knowledge. Anybody can get it. But when does it become valuable? And then when does it become invaluable? Because all information, unless it's put to use, has a non-value issue to it. Well, yeah. But once you start putting it to use and you start seeing it works, then it becomes valuable. How valuable it is to you, or of value it becomes to you, is how much you use it and apply it and what the response is off that. When it becomes invaluable, when you start doing so much with it that you cannot rely on anything else but that, and then that information becomes the most invaluable, it becomes priceless. Now, I've given you the components to begin, grow, become skilled, experience, get opportunities in maybe a small area of success. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than working for Denny's or one of those other places. You know, just get out of fast food. Now, parents, if your child has an ability, capitalize on it now. Put them in these shows. Say, hey, you know what? You want to be an artist? I'm going to sign you up for this farmer's market over here. We're going to get the business license. You don't have to be 18. We're going to make this, and you're going to paint. And teach them how to sell. Teach them how to talk to people. All these things are tools. Wow. I'm a bit crooked. So anyway, guys, I know this has gone on for half an hour longer than you wanted to hear or me talk, but it has let my work dry so I can actually start the process of painting. You guys, it's been a pleasure. If you got any questions, you always contact me. I am in the process of looking for employment as non-degreed instructor. I trust non-degreed instructors better than I trust degreed instructors, only because they don't have any real-world experience to base upon their knowledge. And that's simple. I want proof. I want proof that if you're an art history teacher, that you've done the work, that you can back up whatever you say without a bunch of bullshit or a bunch of lingo that you learned in matriculate out of some kind, so you can articulate. Okay? Articulate, fuck that. I want practical experience. I want to say, if I'm going to do encaustics, and you're going to teach me about encaustics, I want you to have done it, because then I'm going to believe you a lot more. We don't believe anybody who just talks about stuff. We only believe once they've done stuff. Wow, that really works. That's right. So anyway, guys, this is Keeping with Hedgehog Academy. Hopefully it's been inspirational, educational, and informational, all at the same time. If you have any questions, you can always contact me via Facebook here, or you can call me at my studio at 480-764-0422. Leave a message. I get a lot of scam calls, so unless you leave a message, I probably won't respond. So just so you know, or voice message, or message me. I'm always here at my studio, and like I said, I am looking for a non-degreed instructional position in the art. I don't care whether it's painting, drawing, whatever. It's all to me the same. So anyway, guys, everybody have a good one.